Right, hello. So my name is Lisa and I am a public archaeologist. I'm not going to go into what that is because I could talk about hours about that. Essentially, I'm an archaeologist. And you would be surprised to hear that the question I get the most as an archaeologist is nothing to do with the past. It's actually, do you think the world is about to end? And that started in 2012 when I was studying Mesoamerican archaeology, and it's just kept going and going and going. And to be fair, in these highly anxiogenic times, times of really, really high anxiety, where I think I read recently that nearly 30% of 16 to 24-year-olds in Australia genuinely believe that the world is going to end with their generation. At that time, I'd like to make the rather bold statement that one of the biggest contributions that archaeology can make to society is to support a radically optimistic take on life. So what is radical optimism? It's exactly what it says on the tin. It's the choice to believe that there is a possible positive future to work collectively towards. Whoop. No. Yes. No. There we go. Okay, so how does archaeology help us do that? In three main ways. The first one is actually this idea of perspective. And I apologize if I'm disagreeing with Brian in this instance. But essentially, archaeology is a science of looking the deep past in the face. And by looking the deep past in the face, it becomes certainly less intimidating, less dizzying, and more possible to envision a far future. Archaeology is also increasingly, perhaps not originally, but now much more, an imaginative science. It's a science of imagining possibles in the past. And so it gives us the sense of perspective. It's also quite reassuring to think about the fact that humans have gone through the end of the world. The world has ended for all intents and purposes in many civilizations, in many ways, in many places in the world, and we're still here. That accumulation of human experiences and knowledge that we see in the world around us reminds us that even though individual human histories are small, the collective human past is very big, it's huge. Which brings me to my second point, learning about the past. So 10,000 years ago was the beginning of agriculture, but we actually have 300,000 years of human history to learn from and to draw from. So when we think about, when we feel we've exhausted all possibilities, we've only just barely scratched the surface of the problem solving that generations and generations of humans have done before us. And that's, before we even start looking at what other species can teach us. And finally, the third point is on tangibility. Another surprising question that I get a lot as an archaeologist is, do you think we're entering a dark age? Because do you think that all it's going to take is one precarious blackout of anything digital, and essentially all memory of us is gone? And so it's a really reassuring reality to actually interact with these tangible traces of collective human history. And that's both the small, the material, the movable, and traces of humans in a landscape, which have been proven to be extremely beneficial to health, well-being, and so forth. My work is primarily in Mongolia, which is where all these excellent pictures have come from. I'm allowed to say they're excellent because not all of them are by me. And so I just thought I'd give you a quick taster of what that looks like in practice. So Mongolia is a place where the idea of prosperity that's most prevalent now is actually broadly informed by it's essentially the Soviet era. It was brought in the Soviet era, and you see that a lot across the urban-rural divide. Archaeology can help counter these really unsustainable narratives that have only come in over the last 100 years. So in terms of debunking the Soviet ideals of sustainable use of the landscape, it turns out, would you believe it, that every herder in Mongolia aiming to own over 1,000 animals is not sustainable, even though they get shiny medals for it. Archaeologists can help, essentially archaeology can and is helping to unlock past knowledge that of landscape use, etc., that can help deliver the continuity that people inhabiting those landscapes are looking for. Continuity in Mongolia looks like this. It looks like nomadic pastoralism, which is extremely sustainable. In fact, the steppe can't survive. Time, got it. Except, in fact, the steppe can't survive without herders. And the steppe plays a huge role in carbon sequestration, so we really need the steppe to survive. Continuity also looks like this. Time is not linear in Mongolia, so this idea of it's not cyclical either. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's layers condensed. The past, the present, and the future are all happening at the same time, which is a significantly less anxiety-inducing way of thinking about time and knowledge and space. Here's another example of it. And finally, the tangible. So these physical, tangible traces of people inhabiting the landscape for so many hundreds of thousands of years is the heart of community activity, knowledge transfer, etc. So finally, yes, learning from the past, which is not just continuity, but also change. Things have changed in the past and they can change again. And that comes as a surprise to a lot of people. So this might look, I'll leave you with this final image, which might look like a depressed archaeologist at the bottom of a pit, but this is actually a settlement site that proves continuous human habitation, possibly by the same family, the same herder family, since the Neolithic. They have come back every winter, and by excavating this site, we're able to figure out how people adapted to a changing climate, how people adapted to all sorts of adverse conditions, human and environmental. Turns out climate change is nothing new, it's just significantly speeding up, and people have adapted in the past, and we can figure out how they did it. So there you go, a little bit of optimism for today. How do you measure nonlinear time? You don't measure it because it's not a quantity. It's a state. Like Brian said, it's a process. So you don't necessarily measure nonlinear time. You mark the recurrence of events, and if you believe that the past or the future is trying to communicate with you to change something in the present, you listen and you change. Which is very common, is the basis of Mongolian shamanism.